with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. We have in studio State Representative Dan Sullivan. Dan, welcome, sir.
Good morning, Paul. Always good to be here.
Yeah, so we've covered primaries across the state between Republicans. Obviously, we've been covering Jan Morgan, Asa Hutchinson. We talked about Brian King and Bob Ballard yesterday. We also talked about you, State Representative Dan Sullivan, being primaried by a local doctor. His name's Cole Peck. You guys had a debate on Saturday. How do you think that went? How'd that go?
Well, I enjoy the opportunity to talk about what my record is. I've got a very strong conservative voting record. As you know, one of the most conservative in the state, as identified by groups like Americans for Prosperity, Conduit, the Arkansas Family Council.
Yes.
So I've got a very strong voting record there, and it was an opportunity for me to share what that voting record is and how it works for the people of Arkansas.
So you mentioned Arkansas Family Council. They have a voter's guide survey that was printed recently. Have you seen that? I
do. I have, and again, just appreciate what the Family Council stands for and the values they share.
Interestingly, one of the biggest differences between you and your opponent on the Family Council was you did not vote for the tort reform amendment that we're all going to be voting on.
That's correct.
Family Council opposed the tort reform that we're all going to be voted on because of the sanctity of life. And not only that, I saw where the director of the Arkansas Right to Life, Rose Mims, on social media, I believe, came out last week and was opposed to this tort reform amendment.
You know, I'm not going to speak for Rose, but
I'm just saying it's a fact.
It's a fact. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have come out and publicly now and are saying, hey, no, this is not a good thing.
You know, and Paul, I think when I know the Doctors Association has already committed to $250,000 to oppose this. I'm guessing the Hospital Association will.
You mean to be for it?
To be for the
tort reform. Yeah.
Keep an eye on me.
No, I understand. But they want it because it's a way to protect their healthcare industry from having to pay out in lawsuits.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it's about.
Correct. And when it comes, you're going to hear a lot of different arguments about jobs and about all this, but to me it comes down to a right to life issue. I guess as Rose Mims has said, it's a right to life issue. And also, the other part of this is to restrict what lawyers can make. And I'm not going to restrict anybody's salary. I don't want to restrict doctors' salary. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if we want to reduce the cost of health care, because the health care issue is not an access issue, it's not an insurance issue, it's a cost issue. And as those costs continue to escalate, I guess for some people, the easiest way to do that, to resolve that issue, is to limit the cost how much we pay for doctors and how much we pay for healthcare employees. So, one of the first things we could do would be to limit the amount of money doctors can make in the healthcare field. I don't support that.
So your opponent in the debate the other, I guess on Saturday, Cole Peck, he did come out, in favor of the status quo when it comes to Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option, whatever they want to call it. We've now been talking about the need to gradually draw this down to cap enrollment. I know you've been wanting to end enrollment, as also still get the 70-30 match, move in traditional Medicaid, quit giving all these insurance companies billions of dollars. But he said something, and we played it yesterday, but I thought it was interesting where he said that the Arkansas Works, we have to have it, or he talked about how we've got to avoid a single payer system. And I stopped and I said, Arkansas Works and Medicaid expansion is under Obamacare. That was about pushing us towards a single payer system.
Absolutely. That was the goal. That was the ultimate goal, was to blow the system up. And when we first passed Arkansas Works, our private option, people said we have to make lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
And I think everybody understood that concept. We've all been caught in a position where we have no good choice. So what do we do now? But that was back in 2012 or 13? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've proven that doesn't work. We weren't able to make lemonade. This is still a really bad deal. There's a sour taste in our mouth. Mm-hmm. The abuses, I heard you talking about all the abuses and cost overruns in the software that we have, all the other issues.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you. Thanks so much for being with us. It's May the 1st, otherwise known as May Day. So if you Google May Day, the dictionary says that it is celebrated, May 1st, celebrated in many countries as a traditional springtime festival or as an international day honoring workers. Well, I don't know about you, but you know what May signifies to me? National Barbecue Month. That's right. The month of May is National Barbecue Month. So that's what I'm excited about, even though I got this in the month of April. I got a huge head start. I cooked some ribs, did a nice cook on some spare ribs that I cut up St. Louis style. Really, really good. About 6 hours over a pecan fire. And then, I guess a couple weeks before that, I did a brisket, a whole brisket. That was like a 13-hour cook. And that was a lot of fun. Actually, I did that brisket, by the way. I did that brisket on a Friday after I got off the air. And it was Masters Friday, and it was great. It was fantastic. It was like 65 degrees all day, and I was manning the fire, and I pulled the television out in the garage, was watching the Masters. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, May National Barbecue Month. Feel free. I would love to know if anybody has any tips or anything, or you feel free to text the program. Like if you have anything that that you're excited to cook or barbecue in the month of May. Well, you'll do it at some point, Joe. You'll barbecue at some point. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's like one of my hobbies. It's one of the things that I love to do. And I'll tell you this, what's really taken off, and I know it's weird because this is an Arkansas thing, but if you're one of these foodies who are on the YouTube or the internet all the time watching people do these food blogs or whatever, a lot of people are just fascinated with how to cook a brisket because it's two separate muscles and it's a very difficult cook if you don't know what you're doing. Up here, and I went up here, and I say up north because I'm in relative to Texas, right? It's not an inexpensive cut of meat like maybe a pork shoulder would be. So you got to really know what you're doing if you're gonna. Of course, it does feed a lot of people too. So anyway. All right, the phone number, 870-275-9799. Feel free to call or text. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here, folks, and we need your help to do it. It's another day in Arkansas, and yet another opportunity for politicians who are corrupt to come clean. Yeah, that's right. We have Arkansas Online, Jenny Monk, reporting that another lawmaker, has pled guilty to doling favors for bribes. You guessed it. Ooh, look at that right there. It's John Wood's defense for ex-Arkansas senator. Do what? So, you guys need to go follow Conduit News on Twitter. That's the first thing you need to do, because the reason is Conduit News is providing live, up-to-date coverage of the John Woods public corruption trial. So if you want to know what that verdict is, because we're expecting, I guess the closing arguments are going to be this morning, I'm told. We're going to be talking with Josh Waters coming up at 7 o'clock, by the way. Also, Jan Morgan coming up at 7:33. But we'll be talking with Josh Waters about this John Woods thing. But, I mean, the closing arguments, I think, are either this morning or they were yesterday afternoon. I'm not sure. But if you want exact, like, up-to-date tweets, go follow at Conduit News on Twitter, because that as soon as that verdict comes down from the jury on the John Woods public corruption case, you're going to know. But here we have another story. It's pretty much related, if you ask me. Ex-lawmaker pleads guilty to doling favors for bribes. Of course, this has to do with the county judge of Jefferson County. This broke a month or so ago when we figured out that there was, more folks who were consulting for preferred family health care who are in office. We discovered that there were a lot of lawmakers, according to reports, who had signed documents saying what they would be willing to testify for in court. And closing arguments are today. Thank you, Joe. Okay. And so we found all this out, and so now we have this former state legislator and former county judge. He resigned after this information came out, pleading guilty to federal bribery and conspiracy charges, admitting that he filed and voted for legislation in exchange for cash for years. In exchange for cash, this man, Henry Hank Wilkins IV, 64, admitted that he filed legislation for money for years. Now, is there anyone else who's ever done that in Little Rock? The answer is obviously got to be yes. Is there anyone else who's ever done that who has done so because they use the attorney loophole where they have a client that has them on retainer or needs them for their services? They just happen to be a legislator. But as long as the contract between the attorney and the client says that lobbying services are prohibited, then of course they wouldn't file any bills for money. Or any bills that they would file, it wouldn't matter because of the contract says that lobbying services are prohibited. I wonder if there's any attorneys who have ever taken money for filing a bill, number one. Number two, can we agree that that shouldn't be the case? Can we agree that that's wrong? Can we agree that you shouldn't get extra money for filing a bill or voting a certain way? Can we agree as a state that that kind of government is corrupt, that that kind of government is wrong, that that's not what the ideal situation is? Can we agree on that? Okay, then how do we stop it? How do we stop it? I have an idea I'm going to share with you here in just a minute, and it's not a perfect idea, but I'll share that with you here in just a minute. Let's get to some more of these charges here. Henry Hank Wilkins IV, charged with accepting more than $80,000 in bribes. He admitted in February to taking $100,000. Some of the bribes were in cash, while others were false donations to St. James United Methodist Church in Pine Bluff, where Wilkins was the minister, according to the U.S. Department of Justice news release. He also steered about $245,000 in Arkansas general improvement funds to his co-conspirators, according to the news release. General Improvement Fund grants. What were you saying? Are you upset that a church was used in this manner? Is this what you're saying? Oh, hilarious. Okay. Joe says this was an actual church as opposed to ecclesia, which claims to be a church but is really a college. There's actually new developments on that. I believe Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon, he filed a motion trying to get Ecclesia to perform because they have failed to produce the documents about how they spent that how they spent that GIF money. And so hopefully the judge can compel them in some way to turn over those documents. So he also shared $245,000 in Arkansas General Improvement funds to his co-conspirators. Wonder who his co-conspirators are. The bribery is a misuse of funds. It came to light during the March arraignment in Missouri, of Milton Russell Rusty Cranford, who is accused of bribery involving several legislators, including Wilkins. Other legislators mentioned in the trial include Senator John Woods of Springdale, Representative Micah Neal, also of Springdale. Of course, we're waiting the Woods wind down of this case. Again, follow Conduit News on Twitter, at Conduit News on Twitter, if you want up-to-date tweets about what goes on in the courtroom when that verdict comes down. So I want you to understand how widespread this is, okay, or how long this has been going on, and how Republicans in many ways have failed, because Republicans are being investigated by the FBI. But former State Representative Wilkins is a Democrat, and he served the 17th District from 1999 to 2001 and from 2011 to 2015. Okay? Wilkins was also a state senator from District 5 from 2011 to 2015. Wilkins said the bribery occurred from 2010 to 2014. Okay, so it hasn't been going on. But just so you know, 2010 to 2014, this is when Republicans are making massive gains in the state of Arkansas. This is when the people of Arkansas are abandoning the Democratic Party because of its socialist tendencies. They're going with a party platform that more matches their values morally and ethically, on tax policy and everything else, issue by issue, forgetting what the left said about Republicans. Which, by the way, what does the left say about Republicans? Oh, the Republicans only care about the rich. That's what the left says about Republicans. Oh, the Republicans only care about corporate welfare. Well, unfortunately, many of the Republicans in the leadership today are proving the left right on that corporate welfare thing. They really are. Big business. It's really, really sad is what we're seeing here. But from 2010 to 2014, Republicans made massive gains, and the people were voting for reform. And what did we get? Well, we got Republicans now being ensnared in these FBI investigations and being charged with crimes, and they're admitting to guilt. Micah Neal admitting that he's guilty. Jake Files admitting that he's guilty. Orrin Paris admitting that he was guilty. We'll see if John Woods is found guilty. And what was Governor Asa Hutchinson doing during this time? Well, he was preparing to host fundraisers, which he did host fundraisers for re-electing John Woods. Again, if Asa Hutchinson had his way, John Woods would have resigned when he got indicted. So I just want to paint that picture. U.S. Attorney Cody Highland for the Eastern District of Arkansas in a news release said Monday, quote, "Public corruption destroys the trust that is necessary for our republic. In this case, the citizens of Arkansas were betrayed by Mr. Wilkins, and elected officials who abuse their positions for personal gain must be held accountable for that violations of the public trust," end quote. Gazette reporting that the FBI, along with the Eastern and Western Districts of Arkansas, the Western District of Missouri, and the Public Integrity Section of the Department of Justice investigated the case. So, information from this article contributed by Lisa Hammersley and Doug Thompson. Of course, Doug Thompson's busy covering the John Woods case, but this article written by Jenny Monk. Now, what is my idea that I was telling you about? How do we stop this? Well, folks, I believe that this corruption is so rampant. I think it's so overwhelming. I don't even think we really know how deep the rabbit hole goes. So here is my hesitancy if you want to run for office. This is kind of what I think. I think we have to elect people who have no financial baggage. I think we have to elect people who have their own source of income back home in a full-time job. Or, now I realize I know this isn't perfect, or they're retired. Okay? They're retired and they don't need some other source of income. I feel like that should be part of the test until we can pare down and get a handle on this corruption. The amounts of money that flow through state government is hard to track. We don't have the transparency, and so until we can track this money, where it goes, and we have the proper transparency in government with things like Medicaid disclosure or performance-based budgeting or activities-based costing, these types of things, I don't trust any of these guys. And I think if you want to be if you want to run for office, I would just suggest that maybe you say, does the person running for office need this job to stay afloat financially? And if the answer is yes, I'm automatically going to be, okay, well, we got to recognize the type of environment you're sending people down there. And I've said this many times, if you've got a full-time job most of the time back home, most of the time, you have a really good voting record that's in touch with your constituents. Not always, but most of the time, because you don't need the job. You know, let me say this, most of the people who campaign as conservatives and have real jobs back home end up having a conservative voting record more times than not, because they look the governor in the eye, or whoever is trying to say, we need you to vote this way that's against the way you said you'd vote. You can say, I don't need this job. I'm here for the people. You know, so I don't need you to hold this over my head. Well, I'll find a primary opponent for you, and then you'll lose that money that you're using to support your family or support your lifestyle or whatever it is. Again, it's not perfect. You know, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect litmus test, but I think it's certainly one what we need to consider when we send people down there, because the environment down there is very, very corrupt. We've got to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Back in just a moment.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal.
Ethics.
Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. Let me go to the latest over here, well, from yesterday, rather. Conduit for Action. What did ASA say about sanctuary policies for illegal aliens? Conduit's been doing a good job here of putting out these articles, fact-checking what's being said out there. Number one, did Governor Asa Hutchinson say he supports sanctuary cities and colleges to protect illegal aliens / undocumented immigrants? The answer is no, but what the governor said stunned people who oppose sanctuary policies. Number two, did Governor Hutchinson express opposition to legislation to prohibit sanctuary policies at public universities? Yes. Yes, he did. I was down there covering this last year, and I believe that was State Representative Brant Smith's bill to essentially give the universities guidance and say, hey, look, we're not going to set up these sanctuary policies in school. And by the way, the sanctuary cities deal has not been dealt with yet by the president, but it will be, and it's probably going to end up being the equivalent of Ronald Reagan in the air traffic control debacle when they went on strike, and he said, all right, that's fine. We'll just use the military to run the airlines. Okay, so number two, did he express opposition? Yes. Now, ConduitForAction.org writes, you may be thinking, isn't that the same thing? Not quite. While the governor didn't want to prohibit sanctuary policies, that is not the same thing as encouraging sanctuary policies. Before we get to the governor's statement, here is a short background on the legislation. State Representative Brant Smith sponsored HB 1042 of 2017 to prohibit sanctuary policies at state-supported institutions of higher education. Representative Smith introduced the bill after over 100 students at Arkansas State University petitioned the university to adopt a sanctuary policy. Smith's bill was intended to maintain the status quo of there being no sanctuary campuses in Arkansas. I'll have more on this story, fact-checking, setting the record straight, when we come back. Also want to talk a little bit about work requirements in Arkansas Works. Where are we on that? Don't go anywhere.
got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
That we're having, it is in fact the largest expansion of a government in our nation and our state's history, and we cannot manage the people, nor can we manage the money. The solution is in reducing the size of government, including health care.
So when it talks about, in this family council survey that I have, what specific legislation would you enact? One of the things that you say, I'm going to read your statement in the Family Council survey. You say, returning authority to the people and communities. A, improving access to medical care via advanced practice nurses and telehealth. Now, that's one of your bills that you tried to get out in advance last time.
Two bills.
Two bills. And, of course, the Medical Society viciously opposed it, and yada, yada, yada. Now you have a opponent supported by healthcare industry.
Yeah.
That's not a coincidence.
Let me personalize that, Paul. What that means is if you, when this recent flu epidemic happened, that you could call your doctor from your phone sitting at home. And if it met the criteria, your doctor could treat you over the phone. So, and what that means in real time is maybe a $40 charge for that service versus going into your doctor for an office visit and having a $100 plus office visit charge. So the cost in many companies, if you had company insurance, are waiving the deductible if you use telehealth because it's so much cheaper.
Yeah.
And
which would mean that they're not it would mean that they're not able to bill the government in some cases for more money. They'd be able to bill them for less money, and and that would save taxpayer money. And the doctors are against saving taxpayer money. You are looking out for the taxpayer. The doctors are looking out for themselves. And now your opponent's a doctor, or now your opponent. You know, he is a doctor, and now he's
everybody understands where you're going.
Yeah, okay. I'm just making sure everybody understands the special interest here is at war.
Yeah, and the same thing is true of advanced practice nurses. You know, we had a large business in Northeast Arkansas who offered, and they're nationwide, and they tried to open a clinic under this advanced practice nurse model that they do nationwide, and they couldn't open it in Arkansas, and they were going to offer free health care to every employee and every family member, and they're prevented from doing that in the state of Arkansas.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Hang on a second. Got some, never mind. Just kind of looking at my email here. See what we have going on. This is an update. Listen to this. I was referencing this earlier, but I didn't have it actually in front of me. A motion to compel. It was filed against Ecclesia College yesterday concerning failure to produce records evidencing how Ecclesia College spent the General Improvement Fund grant sponsored by former legislators Micah Neal and John Woods. Joey McCutcheon, an attorney for Jim Parsons, who brought the lawsuit, said, quote, "This is just more stonewalling by Ecclesia College, a tactic that has been used by Ecclesia College and their attorney, Travis Story, since day one of Jim Parsons' initial request for records. If Ecclesia has nothing to hide, why don't they just produce the records and be finished with it?" So we'll see. I am interested to look at those documents, because they're going to have to produce them at some point. Freedom of Information Act, just because you're a private college, you're not exempt from FOIA if you take taxpayer money, which Ecclesia did. Ecclesia saying, no, we're private. Then they claim that they're a church. It's just ridiculous. There's something in those documents. There is something in the documents that Ecclesia doesn't want people to see. I don't know what it is. I could speculate, but I won't. But there's something in those documents that they don't want people to see. Telephone number is 870-275-9799. Back to this bill, or it's an article about a bill. It's a fact-check article. What did ACES say about sanctuary policies and illegal aliens? Okay. Did the governor say he supports sanctuary cities and colleges to protect illegal aliens? No, but the governor said, but what the governor said did stun people. Did the governor express opposition to legislation to prohibit sanctuary policies at public universities? Yes, he did. It was State Representative Brant Smith's bill, HB 1042 of 2017, to prohibit sanctuary policies at state-supported institutions of higher education. Representative Smith introduced the bill after over 100 students at a state petitioned the university to adopt a sanctuary policy. Smith's bill was intended to maintain the status quo of there being no sanctuary campuses in Arkansas. The Democrat Gazette reported Governor Hutchinson's comments as follows. Quote, asked about Smith's bill, Governor Asa Hutchinson told reporters Tuesday that illegal aliens have been allowed to attend public institutions. Quote, we don't want to create a climate of fear for them. We want to recognize that many of them are here in the United States because their parents made a decision to come here. It was not a decision of their own. They are living here as a result of their parents' decision, so I think we just need to be very careful about that. I talked to Representative Smith and expressed my concerns about it, end quote. The governor's statement, we don't want to create a climate of fear for them, seems out of place. Why would Representative Smith's bill create a climate of fear if there are currently no sanctuary policies at public universities and the public universities are cooperating with federal immigration authorities? Now, stop. Well, this is how it would be created. By a liberal media misreporting the facts, that we're just trying to maintain the status quo, number one. Number two, a climate of fear would also be caused by having politicians in the highest office of the land not combating the liberal media narrative and saying, no, this is not a climate of fear. We are just maintaining the status quo of not having sanctuary campuses. You understand what I'm saying? So it's two contributing factors. A liberal media that would misrepresent what actually is taking place, and politicians in the highest office of the land that don't have the ability to articulate, or maybe they don't believe it, they don't have the ability to combat the misguided media that would misinform the people with fake news. And those are the things that create a climate of fear. Essentially, lies create the climate of fear in that situation. Conduit for Action goes on. Wouldn't Smith's bill just be the status quo? ACE's peculiar statement has made some wonder whether some state universities are not fully cooperating with federal immigration authorities, but just don't have an official sanctuary policy. If universities are fully cooperating, then perhaps the governor just searched for something to say and decided to repeat a liberal talking point. Which he's known to do. He did that with the Sharia law bill, the anti-Sharia law bill. He was parroting the ACLU talking point. And we know that because Colonel Paul Deckert came on the program and he testifies for the American Law and American Courts bill all over the country. And many times when he's in a committee room, much like he was in Little Rock in 2017, many times across the country when he's in a committee room, it'll be the ACLU testifying against him. And saying that this bill is it's a bill in search of a problem or something. And that's exactly what ACES said about the Sharia law bill, that he didn't support it or sign it because that was because it was a bill in search of a problem, or solution in search of a problem. Yeah, same thing with Medicaid. A lot of liberal talking points. So back to the fact check. The governor, listen, this is what you need to know, though, because there's a lot of stuff going on social media about this. The governor did not say he supports sanctuary policies. However, the governor opposed prohibiting sanctuary policies by law. That's what you need to know. He did not say he supports sanctuary cities or sanctuary policies at our universities. However, the governor opposed prohibiting sanctuary policies by law, which may lead some people to go on Facebook or Twitter and say that he supports sanctuary policies. You can understand how somebody might make that link based on what you do versus based on, what you didn't do. People can assume your motives. That doesn't always mean they're correct. But the fact check here is the governor did not say he supports sanctuary policies. However, the governor opposed prohibiting sanctuary policies by law. The bottom line is, if you think a public university or local government should be allowed to adopt sanctuary policies, then you would be pleased with the governor's statement against the legislation. On the other hand, if you oppose sanctuary policies, then you would be concerned about the governor's statement. And go to Conduit for Action's Facebook page, and you can tell them if the governor was right or wrong in not supporting a prohibition against sanctuary policies. So, anyway, phone number 870-275-9799. Let's move on over to this story. On the Arkansas Works requirements. How many of you think we're going to get these requirements? And now, I know we've technically gotten them from the Trump administration, but let's talk about implementation. There's supposed to be this rush to implement. Now, just so you know, if work requirements are implemented that actually kick people off the program, that means less money for Blue Cross and Blue Shield. That means less money that goes to the state of Arkansas because the state in turn ends up taxing the insurance companies for every premium that they charge in a premium tax for the privilege of doing business in the state of Arkansas. That's what the statute says. So, just so you know, every person they remove is less money to the big insurance companies. So I would suggest to you that there might be an incentive to claim that we have work requirements that sound conservative, but if they never actually get implemented, or if it's just a bunch of tomfoolery, or if it's just a system that can never really work, kind of like the software that never really works at DHS. I understand Ace is on top of that, though. He's instituted computer coding in every classroom in Arkansas, so in about 18 years we'll have some competent DHS programmers. In 18 years we'll solve this situation, trust us. You just need to know that. Okay. So this headline here from Andy Davis, that email to soon be mandatory in health plan. So if you are on Arkansas Works, you are going to have an email account and access to a computer if you want to keep your health coverage. Because it's using your email accounts. That's how you will log on to the state website or portal and self-report whether you met a requirement to spend 80 hours a month working or on another approved activity, or that they qualified for exemptions. Okay, so working or all these other things that you can do that is not work to stay on the program. And we've talked about how these work requirements are, at best, part-time work requirements. When you look at the exemptions, though, there's a lot of stuff people can do besides work. But anyway. So if this is the way things are going to go, you would say, part of you might say, okay, well, if you don't have an email address, then you're just going to get cut out and, cut out of the program, and that'd be a good thing. Well, it wouldn't be a good thing for the insurance companies. Remember that. They're getting all this money every month, regardless of whether or not you go to the doctor. But I just have this sneaking suspicion that there's going to be people very upset about this. And I think it's all going to get so convoluted and so ridiculous that the email, making everyone have an email, because not everybody has an email. Not everybody in rural Arkansas has access to, the internet the way you would think. I mean, they might have an Obama phone. But I think in the long run, if I know government, and I think we all do, this is going to delay the implementation of the work requirements. I just don't have any confidence. I don't have any faith in this particular aspect of our government. And it's not just me. Of course, the Democrats. So you're going to make them have to have an email address and have to use a computer in order. There's a lot of lawmakers that are worried about this. Senator Eddie Cheatham, a Democrat of Crossett, you mentioned portals several times. Some of my folks don't know what a portal is, meaning a portal, a web portal. He added that internet access is scarce in some areas. See, just right there, right off the bat, right there. Just because of that, there's going to be, telling you, it's going to be, it's going to get delayed. It's going to, or they're going to try to implement it. There's going to be some disastrous results, and then they're going to walk it back. Again, you have to understand the incentive here. Yeah, I know the state's going to be paying 10% of this real soon, but here's the thing. The insurance companies, they donate to PACs, then the PACs donate to the politicians, and for every person they actually successfully remove from this program with work requirements that people don't meet, the insurance companies lose money. How do you think that makes them feel? How do you think that makes them feel? Representative Reginald Murdoch, another Democrat from Mariana, said he's especially worried about some of the people he spoke with while campaigning door-to-door this week. Listen to me, you guys. There's no way that these people I'm talking about are going to have an email address, he said. They're not going to get there, meaning you don't have an email address. So you get kicked off Arkansas Works? Who's going to get the blame for that? Ah, right, Republicans. It'd be a lot better if you just in the program, or you know what I mean? It'd be a lot better if you just cap enrollment. Instead of doing this stuff, just cap enrollment. And then when people cycle off the program, they can't get back on. That'd be a lot easier than doing this. Let's see, what else do we have? You tell me. You tell me what you think. 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. All right. So when you are governor of the state of Arkansas, you can do a lot of stuff. You can appoint people to boards. As we talked with Mr. Ray Vester of the plant board yesterday, you can decide to not appoint people to boards. You have agencies and commission. You know the real story there behind the plant board with, and by the way, the video of that is coming out as soon as I get off the air today. It's coming out. We had some problems with our YouTube page yesterday downloading that video, but I've got a remedy for it, so don't worry. The real story behind the plant board situation, with what Ray Vester said, is that the governor has attempted to take the plant board over because he does not like that there are other people who get to appoint to that board independent of what the governor thinks. And if the governor wants people who support him on the plant board, he doesn't want people who maybe don't like him, or maybe they just are focused on their individual industry or whatever. And, that's a whole nother conversation about, the purpose of the plant board, and things like that, and what that does to the small farmer. And that is a conversation worthy of having. And I've heard from some of you about that, and I appreciate that. The story here, though, is that the governor is trying to take something that is, at this point, decentralized, and he is trying to take the plant board and centralize it, okay? He's trying to centralize it so he can control it and have access to the money. There was an error in that interview yesterday. The plant board's budget in the year is not $950,000. It's $9.5 million, okay? A significant amount of more money that the governor could use if, increase spending. So that is the big story there, and it was good to expose it, and if there's new developments, we'll keep you posted on that. But this next story is in many ways why Asa wants control of the plant board. Because if he can treat the plant board like a state agency, if he can get it absorbed as a state agency, he can have a bunch of cheerleaders that keep people in line. If anybody tries to step out of line. For example, don't you think Asa would love if everybody on the plant board was 100% going to vote for him? and was telling all of their farmer buddies to vote for him, don't you think that would be good? Wouldn't it be great if the plant board was putting out advertisements for Asa Hutchinson, telling everybody what a great ag governor Asa Hutchinson is? Don't you think Asa would love it if the plant board would just heap upon him praise for his, quote, leadership, end quote? Wouldn't Asa love that? Well, how does Asa run his other state agencies? Over at Conduit for Action, state agencies are advertising for Asa. They're advertising for Asa. Governor Asa Hutchinson is using his state agencies as a campaign tool, putting out advertisements with no purpose other than to claim we need Asa as governor. And again, this is part of the reason why you see him try to take over the plant board. We need Asa as governor. It is a shameless use of your state resources to promote his political career. Conduit for Action writes, for example, Asa's Arkansas Economic Development Commission has been running a full-page ad that has no purpose other than to promote Asa's campaign. It just doesn't say vote for Asa. Here's what the advertisement says. Meet the guy who put the pro in pro-business. For a state to have a pro-business climate, it must have a pro-business governor. Arkansas's Asa Hutchinson is actively involved in attracting and keeping business in our state. He's developed a pro-business culture that is ready to act quickly and decisively on corporate interests. Learn more about how a business-friendly state can work for you at arkansasedc.com/Asa. And then you see that right there if you're watching at facebook.com/Conduit News. You see the actual print ad. Meet the guy who put the pro in pro business. The Arkansas Economic Development Commission advertisement doesn't tell you anything about its programs, how to apply for anything, or provide any information that needs to be advertised. The advertisement has only one purpose: to tell you Asa needs to be a governor to have a pro-business climate. Oh, and by the way, it is a little too honest there. When it says Arkansas's got to be ready to act quickly and decisively on corporate interests. Notice that doesn't say small business interests. And you know what, Asa, if you wanted to do something for corporate interests, you could get rid of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and end the corporate income tax in Arkansas. That would treat all businesses in Arkansas the same. The small corporations to the big ones. So they don't tell you anything. It's just Asa using his state agency. And that's what I say, that's compared to the plant board. If he had controlled the plant board the way he wanted, don't you think that they might be talking about, instead of it'd be like Asa standing in a field. This governor is helping corporate interests like Monsanto. And we need this. We need this governor if this state's going to survive agriculturally. Oh, man. The Arkansas Economic Development Commission advertisement for Asa. Okay, listen to this. The ad on the right was copied from the Northwest Business Journal dated April 16th, 2018. The journal is a publication of talk, business, and politics. Does anyone think this is how your government resources should be used? As for the ad's assertion that Asa is developing a pro-business climate, we disagree. What Asa is doing is giving away your money to favored businesses, picking winners and losers among businesses. Meanwhile, the Arkansas business climate is hobbled by Asa wanting to keep Arkansas's high tax state by, of course, he wants to tell you he wants to cut them later. Of course, he gave like $900,000 to a Taekwondo association so they could build a dojo in North Little Rock. By the way, did you know the Arkansas Economic Development Commission is just the name of a state agency and is not a commission? There is a council that advises AEDC that is made up of political appointees appointed to 4-year terms by the governor. According to the AEDC website, the council members, the names are listed there. I'm not going to go into them. Why does Asa feel entitled to use state agencies to promote his political career? Is this the kind of Arkansas values you can expect from your governor? We got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine.
and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Money, power, prestige, essence, ace. Available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From Zenata Rhino Collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. Nepotism. The aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal deception. Deep state. Ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Communist. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. That kind of wraps up the first hour. I'm going to look at some of your Facebook comments over the hour. I'm sorry I have neglected them. My apologies. For some reason, my internet is really, really slow this morning on my side of the glass. I have a different internet connection, though, than the streaming computer does, just so you know. Do what? Yeah, and we're very grateful for that. Yeah, appreciate it. So we got Josh Waters going to give us a John Woods public corruption trial update coming up next. And then at 7:33, we'll be talking with Republican Jan Morgan, gubernatorial candidate. We'll talk a little bit about that Boone County dinner that she spoke at where Asa was in the same room. We'll be back in just a moment.
Talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
They've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Now, they've opened up, since then, they've opened up a clinic limited to what is allowed in Arkansas. But now, can you imagine opening the opportunity for more industries to open a healthcare clinic in their business for advanced practice nurses to practice at the full scope of their licensure?
Just like other states.
Just like many other states. But the healthcare lobby, and of course the healthcare lobby is one of the most powerful lobbies in the state. If you go against them, you're going to end up with a well-funded
primary opponent.
There you go.
That's exactly right. All right, well, so let's look at what your opponent says he wants to do in this family council survey. An example of some of the legislation that I want to work on and enact, and this is Colpeck saying this: bring down the cost of health care for all people, especially for the person that goes to work every day to provide for their family. How does giving billions of dollars to insurance companies who are going to put PBMs and put pharmacies out of business, how does support of Arkansas Works do that? I mean, if you look at the survey, after 2013 and us doing all this, we're now declining in health care achievement according to polls or surveys.
Well, we've actually stayed stagnant. We were 48th and we're still 48th.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, we're 48th, yeah. Let's see. And then you get down here to, common sense regulatory reform that would allow businesses and institutions like schools to flourish. I mean, common sense regulatory reform, you were just talking about that. If you were to get the regulations away from advanced practice nurses and letting them practice the full scope, but he's against that, right?
Well, yeah, true. And Arkansas is one of the most regulated states in the nation. And, we need to do this not just in the medical side, but in all areas. I think we even have another task force looking at all of this to try to reduce regulation. It's easy to make these statements about platitudes. We need to help everybody. We need to be better. But, when it comes right down to making the changes and advocating for changes that do this, I've got a very strong record of doing that.
Let's see here. Number 5, he wrote, your opponent, that he wants to prevent legislators from introducing bills that directly benefit them financially.
I think I agree with that, because we would not let any of our doctors vote on Arkansas Works, or any of their wives vote on Arkansas Works, or anybody in the healthcare industry. Brian King finally has an ally.
That's true.
Brian, and I shouldn't. Let me rephrase my statement.
You're being very sarcastic.
And I need to stop that.
Yeah.
I think there's a level, you have to understand how Arkansas legislature works. It's not about, we have a working legislature. All of us have jobs. And to bring your expertise into the field where you work legislatively is absolutely a good thing. What we need is honesty, integrity, transparency, which is what Brian King's bill
was trying to do several times.
Tried to do. And I don't know that he has any support from the medical field.
Yeah.
The other thing, just again to demonstrate the naivete there, if we couldn't pass any bills that benefit us financially, we couldn't pass a tax cut. Now, let that sink in, folks.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what my opponent intended.
No, I think he's aware.
I don't know. Maybe he'll come on your show.
Well, yesterday as I was talking about him, I didn't have. I've only been able to call his clinic, and I didn't have his number. And I had multiple people, when I said I didn't have his number, multiple people text me his number all of a sudden. So I sent him a text yesterday, told him he's welcome to come on. I would love to talk to him about this. I mean, I would love for him to have the opportunity to say, yeah, of course I didn't mean, that wouldn't mean a tax cut. I'm just, the public corruption that's in the headlines and everything else. But you do raise a point that if you want to prevent legislators from introducing bills that directly benefit them financially or voting on them, then he would not be able to vote for Arkansas Works because he's a physician.
Right. And again, our farmers wouldn't be able to be on the Agri Committee.
Right.
It just is a naive statement. I think another comment he makes about listening to people. Once you're in office for a few years, you have people that are frustrated with some of the votes that you have. I have a record of meeting with people, whether they agree or disagree.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's hour number two. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We don't just want to talk about conservative ideas. We actually want to see these things implemented into reality, okay? Don't just use popular conservative ideas to amass political power over the people you claim to represent, okay? Let's actually allow this system to work and do what you say you're going to do. Don't come back to us once you've been down to the Marble Palace or up to the Marble Palace or over to the Marble Palace with excuses as to why you can't do what you said you were going to do. Anyway, welcome back to the program. And I want to welcome Josh Waters from Political Strategies, who is watching over this public corruption trial of John Woods, and he's going to give us another update. Josh, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Paul. Today could be the last day in the John Woods corruption trial. They will have closing arguments this morning and jury instructions, and then it goes to the jury, and it's just up to them how long it takes from there.
So you say closing arguments are going to be this morning. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. And then how long do you think, deliberations are going to be? There's no way to know that, but you think it'll be pretty quick? Give us your opinion on that.
My opinion is I don't imagine they'll, go back and come, I don't think it'll be, 10 or 15 minutes. They'll probably spend a few hours on it. But I would be a little surprised if it's dragged out very long. And if it is, I think that probably means they're, they have some doubts. But then again, this has been over a 3-week trial. So if it is dragged out maybe into tomorrow, it's just hard to say because there has been so much evidence, so many exhibits, so much testimony in this case.
Yeah.
I think, they'll want to make sure they do their due diligence and go through everything and line everything up. But I think the prosecution's done a pretty good job getting a lot of stuff.
But so you're saying we could have a verdict as early as today?
We could. It'll go to, I imagine, this morning we'll fill up with the closing arguments and with the jury instructions, and then it'll go to the jury after that. So even if they spend, all afternoon, 3-4 hours, they could come back later this evening. They could go all afternoon and then break for the evening and come back tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they could be deliberating for a week.
All right. So here is Joe. Will you throw Conduit News up there on Twitter? Here's the Twitter page.
Yes.
And by the way, it was not only was it great to get to use Conduit News to report on what's going on in the John Woods trial, but it was also great to talk about the task force meeting, the tax farce, and reading the Conduit News tweets about what the recommendations were, who made which motion, and that sort of thing. This is a great resource. And so, first off, if you're not on Twitter, you need to get on Twitter because it is a really efficient way to share information. But if you follow folks at Conduit News, you see right there on your screen, not only do they retweet articles and things like that, but you're actually going to get up-to-date tweets about what's going on. And I guess this is done, Josh, in between recesses and things like that, because you can't really have your phone in the courtroom.
Correct. It's in between recesses. Sometimes there's, a lull in the courtroom, and so you can kind of maybe get something out, but, as things are going, you can't really, be on your phone. So during recesses, but yes, but I'm going to be there, and as soon as that decision comes out, Conduit News has let me use their Twitter, and I'm going to tweet out whatever the verdict is, no matter what it is, and try to get the news to the people as soon as we can.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, folks, if you want to know, and we could have a verdict as early as today on this case. Josh, I know you have, you've been down at the Marble Palace for at least a session. You've seen how things work. You've seen, how hard it is for limited government to actually advance. In many cases, conservatives have to play defense on tax increases from people who are supposed to be, Republicans that represent a platform that's against those tax increases. But just in terms of the level of corruption that is being exposed here, I think the lengths people are willing to go to carve out a financial niche for themselves while being in Little Rock is on full display here. And I'm wondering if have you heard anything? I mean, what are your thoughts on all that being exposed, or have you heard anybody else in the courtroom just kind of talking about how embarrassing this is? And we should all be embarrassed that this is, the state of Arkansas politics right now, this level of corruption.
Yeah, it is embarrassing. You find out even more headlines just this week over with Jake Files, and they're going more in depth into that wire transfer. And honestly, it sounds a whole lot like what's been going on in the John Woods trial. Someone who wants legislation passed directs money to a legislator. At one point, Paul, yesterday, part of the prosecution's argument was, if these legislators are on retainer, and they use air quotes, and then they're passing legislation ongoing for all these different clients, that shouldn't be happening, that's a violation of the law. And then,
they said that. They actually said it was a violation of the law. If you're an attorney and you have a client, and the client's paying the attorney, and then they're filing legislation, they said that that's in violation of the law?
Correct, and that's kind of one of the charges against John Woods is honest services fraud. And so, it wouldn't technically be illegal for, to be hired to lobby or do something if you're not in the legislature. But if you're paid on retainer as a legislator to use your influence down there, that their argument is that would fit under honest services fraud. It would be a violation of the law, and you could end up where John Woods is.
Well, so even though, we've talked about this before, we even have a parody that we run here on Conduit News Radio about that. Mm-hmm. If you sign into that agreement with an attorney, the client does, and as long as the contract says lobbying services are prohibited, the general thought is that that's the loophole that they can use to pay the attorneys extra and them getting the. I mean, did they bring that up at all, or no?
No, and I was actually thinking of that too, because it came out last session when they were trying to run that bill, Senator Colin Smith and Senator Rice, that there was kind of this loophole that may allow this. And so since this is a federal case and these are federal charges, that might be the distinction there, what they were talking about yesterday versus the kind of the loophole in the ethics law at the state level, and whether it would be a state crime.
Wow.
I think that's probably what the distinction is there. But, it really is sad. At the end of the day, these are public servants. They're supposed to be out there, working for the benefit of all. And that's come up, several times that, he was just down there looking out for people that could get him money rather than.
Yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing. I mean, and we have in the news yesterday, it broke yesterday that you got former state legislator Hank Wilkins. Mm-hmm. He has pled guilty for taking $80,000 in bribes. In February, he admitted to taking $100,000, and the bribes were to file legislation. And that's what he's saying he's doing. Exactly what they're talking about in court. He's saying that this is what he did. And then you mentioned Jake Files, Senator Jake Files. Now there's a letter that's been written to the U.S. attorney saying, hey, I know he pled guilty already, but a part of his guilty plea have to do with this $80,000. Can you investigate this $80,000 that he got from a nursing home lobbyist, and he got the transfer right after he filed a piece of tort reform legislation that would have benefited the nursing home. And and I'm going to also throw this in because in the grand scheme of things, I think we have to understand just how corrupt this Medicaid mafia is. Just the potential for corruption that's out there because of we're just not keeping track with the money. You have Rusty Cranford, who's on trial in Missouri. You have several of his co-conspirators, one from New Jersey. And by the way, this is the reason this is federal is because you're taking Medicaid dollars and using it to lobby and pay off lobbyists and politicians. You have people in Arkansas, Eddie Cooper, Rusty Cranford, that are connected with this preferred family health care, John Woods, and whoever else has worked for them. And Rusty Cranford was he was in so deep that according to reports, he tried to have the witness in New Jersey murdered. And he was found with a revolver and $17,000 cash on him when they arrested him. And the FBI says they have recordings of him propositioning a convicted felon to go and murder this guy in New Jersey. This is so, and I know that's not a part of the trial that you're watching, but people just need to understand the scope and the status of Arkansas politics. And it's just absolutely embarrassing and corrupt.
Yes, absolutely. And, we talked about last week politics a little bit, but Rusty Cranford and his transactions with John Woods actually are a part a little bit of some of the charges against John Woods, not against Shelton, but against John Woods. And, they had bank records up there, this $400,000 that went to AmeriWorks. Immediately after that, there were checks cut to Cranford Coalition and another entity that I think they think is associated with Rusty Cranford for tens of thousands of dollars. And on the memo lines, it has GIF in the memo line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talking about a smoking gun. So it's really unfortunate. And I think, at the end of the day, Paul, it just goes back to transparency. Until we know and until there's a system set up for transparency that, hey, if you do this, this is going to be a transparent process. You can FOIA all this, and the people and the newspapers and the media can get the information out there. Until that happens, until the legislators basically have the fear of that being out there to the public, I don't know what's going to stop. If we don't have more transparency, more prosecution of this, or the people just stand up and vote these people out that are associated with all this, I don't know what's going to change. So I think transparency is the first step in getting, Medicaid disclosure bill. Something like that would go a long ways to rooting out this problem.
Yeah, and Senator King has been the forefront of trying to get that passed, so they don't want to do it because I think a lot of them are consultants making money on the side, and they don't want to have to disclose it. And that would be why they, are bending over backwards to support Obamacare in Arkansas, what's left of it, from a socialist health care program from a socialist president. Why are Republicans in Arkansas bending over backwards to try to keep it? I think it's because, Democrats actually agree with the policy. In order to get Republicans who campaign the opposite, you got to pay them. I think that's what we're going to find out when this is all said and done. That Republicans, you got to pay them to violate their, what they said on the campaign trail. Let me ask you this about Rusty Cranford, because you are right. Rusty Cranford is mentioned in the John Woods case with this AmeriWorks, this preferred family health care company called AmeriWorks, and they sent him several $100,000, and then once they knew they were pinched, Rusty Cranford, I think, sent the money back to the GIF fund. Now, is that why, just speculation on your part, but is that why Rusty Cranford didn't get wrapped up in this particular trial with John Woods and get wrapped up and lumped in with Randall Shelton and John Woods? Or were the feds like, well, they've already got him on this racket up there in Missouri? I mean, what are your thoughts on why Rusty Cranford did not get pulled into this John Woods case and charged formally?
I think that's a great question. The only thing I can think of is, that they didn't maybe have enough to. I don't know. I think there's enough there to get him on conspiracy charges. So I'm not sure if that was a prosecutorial discretion decision, saying, hey, he's going to be, we're going to get him on all these charges up here in a different federal district court rather than down here and have him charged, in multiple district courts. Not sure the decision on that. I think there's plenty of evidence that's come out that could, charge him as a co-conspirator in this. And for that matter, the Gosses, I think especially Tom Goss, he's the one on the bank account that was, signing the checks and sending the money. So,
wow.
It's that has been, somewhat confusing. And then, of course, Mike and Neil has pleaded guilty, and Warren Parris has pleaded guilty. And so Warren Parris did take the stand at the end of last week just to plead the fifth. It was done outside the view of the jury. So that, that took place. So that's where we're at. It's down to John Woods, Mike and Neil, and the jury will decide their fate today.
Wow. Well, we will be watching. I want to remind everybody to follow at Conduit News on Twitter for the latest updates. As soon as it can happen. I mean, as soon as the tweet can be made, Conduit News is going to be there reporting. And Josh Waters, I really appreciate it. Attorney with political strategies. It's always great to have you on the program, sir.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Paul. Have a good one.
All righty. Good luck to you, sir. Folks, we're going to take a break. We're going to be back. And when we come back, we're going to talk about flip-flops. Don't go anywhere.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas.
Welcome to the Arkansas Obamacare Hotline. We would be more than happy to help you enroll in Arkansas Obamacare today. We just need a little information about you. Let's get started. If you're disabled, pregnant, or looking for medical care for your child, the program is currently full, and there's no doctors to see you. Please hang up now. If you're an able-bodied adult, please press 1. If you're currently employed, we're sorry, but you most likely do not qualify for the program. Please quit your job and call back later. If you don't work and instead play video games all day with your cats in your grandmother's basement, please press 1. If you've never lived in Arkansas, press 1. If you currently live in another state, press 1. If you recently purchased a home in New Jersey for $750,000, please press 1. If your current identity has previously been used by another person, was created before your actual date of birth, or doesn't really exist, please press 1. Congratulations! It sounds like you're the perfect candidate to receive Arkansas Obamacare. Please stay on the line, and a hardworking DHS employee will be with you as soon as possible. While you're waiting, feel free to relax as your ambitions to gainful employment fade away. PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Oh, boy. Welcome back. 870-275-9799. Okay, so we have, I'm telling you, over at conduitforaction.org, they are pumping out some articles, and it is a lot of fun to read these. Now, they've got a newest, I guess the newest one is about flip-flops. Flip-flops to kill school choice and election reform. Now, once again, this is an article that's highlighting State Representative James Sturch and his voting record. Now, yesterday, we told you about Senator Alan Clark's Facebook post, a very detailed Facebook post that just really skewered State Representative James Sturch for his dishonest mailer. So Senator Alan Clark from Garland County, getting involved in this Senate race between State Representative James Sturch and incumbent Senator Linda Collins-Smith. Senator Linda Collins-Smith, who has, according to scorecards, a very conservative voting record. I mean, she really toes the line when it comes to her principles, which are limited government. Does it grow government? Then the answer is no. Does it increase dependency on government? Then the answer is no. Does it spend money we don't have? Then the answer is no. A great economic freedom filter. That's Conduit for Action's economic freedom filter. So if we're going to look at one of the most conservative people in the Arkansas Senate, then you're gonna need to look at James Sturch's record to say, okay, you're trying to replace this person. What is your record? And that's why Conduit for Action is doing this. Flip-flops to kill school choice and election reform. Representative James Sturch went to the well of the House of Representatives to speak against HB 1222, a school choice bill. Here's how he introduced the speech. Quote, "Colleagues, this is the first time in my legislative career I have ever spoke for or against a bill." Wait. Conduit writes, wait. Stop right there. Do you realize that means there had been thousands of bills debated in the House chamber for more than 2 years while Sturch sat in his chair with nothing to say? Yes, you heard that right. Thousands of bills. Okay, that being said, for James Sturch, standing up is synonymous with flip-flopping. March 16th, 2017, Sturch stood up and went to the well of the House to speak against the school choice bill, but he had voted for the school choice bill in committee. A complete flip-flop in just a couple of days. Then on March 30th, 14 days later, Sturch again stood up, but this time to walk out of the House chamber, so his vote for election reform would be stricken from the record and the bill would fail because without his vote, the bill no longer had a majority. This flip-flop only took him 2 minutes. James Sturch, quote, "When conservatives want to get things done, James Sturch is the only candidate who can be counted on," he says. Conduit writes, that should read, "counted on to be a flip-flop." Having excelled at flip-flopping in the House of Representatives, Sturch wants to take his flip-flopping ways to the Arkansas Senate. Of course, there is a Republican primary on that starts, I guess it's May 22nd, but early voting, you realize early voting starts on May the 7th. It's a week away. Telephone number, call or text 870-275-9799 or check us out, facebook.com/Conduit News. We have Republican gubernatorial candidate Jan Morgan coming up next.
you've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Agree with me, and taking the hard questions and listening to those folks and responding to it. And if we disagree, we still disagree. But it's about the debate. That's what our nation is founded on. And I think voters really need to consider if they're going to support someone who avoids coming on your show, or who avoids coming on another show, or avoids meeting with people who disagree with them, they need to be very cautious about voting for those kinds of people.
So I watched the debate between you two. We're talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan, by the way. He's in a Republican primary. He's got one of the most conservative voting records, according to multiple scorecards, down at the legislature, and yet he has a primary opponent. Now, if you watch the debate, you and your opponent, Dr. Cole Peck, aside from the Arkansas Works issue and a few, he's against your regulatory reforms that would save taxpayer money in health care. He seems to kind of just be for a lot of the same stuff that you're for in platitudes.
Yes, because, and I made that comment several times.
Okay.
Then just when I would talk or he would talk, it's my voting record. One of them, a comment he made was I frustrate people, particularly our superintendents. And of course, I know all those folks. And I asked them, and they said, "Yeah, you do." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, I passed." Of course, they were laughing and we were joking because we're friends. I passed or helped pass through Education Committee, which I'm on, at least 20 bills that really benefit our teachers, benefit our service people, reducing their costs going to college, helping on the health insurance for our teachers, transferring money over to health insurance for teachers. And the superintendents realize, and we, the ones that discussed it with me, 95% of the bills or more that went through there, they support. And I support it. So we disagree on a very small percentage of things, particularly about the school choice. But that's really the only source of disagreement between us and frustration. But I work very closely with our superintendents. As a matter of fact, Paul, one of the things I'm trying to do to raise our teacher pay, if people watch the newspaper I think it was last week, our State Department of Education dedicated
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, we're in the home stretch here, last large segment of the day. Thanks so much for being with us. We can't do the program without you. We have on the phone, welcome back, the Republican gubernatorial candidate for governor, Jan Morgan, is back with us. Jan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Paul. How are you today?
I'm doing well. So you are going all across the state. I mean, you are everywhere. I'm looking on Facebook every day, and you're at this event, that event. You're meeting people. How's that going? Where were you yesterday?
Oh, man. Seriously, Paul? I can hardly remember where I was. Let's see. Last night, I can remember the last place I was yesterday, which was Glenwood, Arkansas.
Great.
Who the folks there say they've never seen anyone hardly running for any office, much less a gubernatorial candidate. But, we're trying to hit every single area of the state. And the biggest problem that we've seen is that you've got 2 or 3 major cities that get most of the attention. And, of course, everywhere else is, they say we feel like a stepchild. The infrastructure, the state money, the attention is just missing in just about every other area of the state. So we're spending a lot of our time trying to make sure that we hit as many counties and cities as possible and get a chance to talk to the people as well as listen to them.
And that's great. Now, it's the reason I brought up where all you've been is because on Saturday you were at the Boone County GOP event, and Asa was there. Asa spoke first, and you spoke second. You were the keynote speaker scheduled, 6 months ago, scheduled last year, and your speech was not a campaign speech the way Asa's was. Tell us about that.
Well, because my campaign is not about me. Asa's speech was about him. It's about him getting reelected. my speech was it was a message to the Republican Party from the people of this state. The reason I'm in this race is not because of me, but because of the people in the state. It's a message that the people sent when 72% of them voted for Donald Trump in the last presidential election. It is a message that the Republican Party failed to heed. And so my point that night, it was very much a stepping on the toes of the establishment end of the Republican Party that has continued to proceed politics as usual, in spite of the fact that people have sent resounding message after resounding message that they are truly ready for change. And it was my message was about what is at stake for the Republican Party if we do not do something and turn this tide, that we cannot continue 4 more years of what we have had, but that if we do not, Arkansas will once again be a blue state, and that would be a major travesty after the years and years of fighting to become the supermajority in our state. So it was, there were many points. Some of the points I brought up, Paul, were that, there's a great disparity between the Arkansas that our government and our governor tells us that we have versus the real Arkansas that most of us live in. There's a great divide between the few prospering off of our state, as you have been talking about this morning, and the forgotten people who pay for that prosperity. I said that there was something wrong that when people fear their state government rather than our government fearing the people. And I just went down the list, point after point after point, that the people have tried to send. And, it was interesting watching the governor's reaction because clearly he was not expecting that. He was expecting me to be in attack mode on him, and instead it was a "Are you hearing us?" message to the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's good. I mentioned that yesterday when I was kind of going over the audio of the two of you. His speech was, very much giving his resume as to why he needed to be reelected, which, he's run, 3, 4, 5 statewide elections, and he's, because of you, Jan, he's having to reintroduce himself to the people of Arkansas. And it's like, well, we already know who you are, but he's having to, talk about being appointed by Ronald Reagan and all this other stuff in order to, that doesn't erase what he's done in the last 3.5 years, which is, you mentioned it, a shell game. You cut taxes here, but you don't talk about the taxes that you raise over here.
Well, and I also talked about the fact that the Republican Party has depended on low information voters to pass off these kinds of shell games and misrepresentation of record, okay? And that's what he's been relying on. My presence in this race has forced him to actually try to cover up even more so what he's done and to appear more conservative. For example, in his speech, he talked about the unemployment rate. He said it's, record in history unemployment rate of 3.something%. And my message to the Republicans is, you know what? People in Arkansas are no longer buying that because they know that the unemployment statistic is simply a reflection of those still actively seeking employment. The true state of our state on the employment front, and the most sobering information, is the thousands upon thousands of people who have given up, who are no longer looking for work and are now on the welfare rolls. Those are the numbers that the governor doesn't want to talk about, and the Republican Party doesn't want to face up to. And on the issue of taxes, playing the shell game and telling people you've cut $150 million in taxes and it's a historical tax cut, but also not telling people about the historical level of government spending that we have engaged in and the tax increases that we have passed in order to support that state spending. See, these are things that the people are now woken up to, and people are no longer buying that message. And it was a message to him as well. It was, hey, Governor, look, are you hearing? These people aren't paying attention to what you're saying now. You need to either try to defend what you've done or take a new message to the people because they know better now.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. We're talking with Jan Morgan. She's a Republican gubernatorial candidate. Your campaign, Jan, is a grassroots campaign. It is the definition of a grassroots campaign. You are engaging people who don't normally get engaged. I was driving around up in my neck of the woods where I live in northeast Arkansas, and I was driving around some county roads, and I have never seen political signs at all in some of these people's yards, and there were Jan Morgan signs, and many of these people are printing the signs themselves to put in their yards.
Right. Well, yes, we are definitely the textbook definition of grassroots campaign, meaning that No one on our staff is paid. They're all volunteers. I mean, who does that? Who runs a statewide governor's race on just volunteer efforts? But what is exciting, Paul, and we've done it this way on purpose, and the reason is I want to prove not only to Arkansas but to America that no longer do you have to have multi-millions of dollars to run for state office. It's those multi-millions of dollars required that leads to corruption, because if you are running for office and you have to take that kind of money from the upper economic elite, then you are the puppet to those people and to those entities and to those special interests. My point is, and I hope we're able to prove it, that you don't have to have that if you put boots on the ground and the people get serious about taking control of their government and they get involved and vote and educate their friends. It's, talking to your friends and neighbors. It's people, I mean, there's a guy, one of our volunteers is out on the street corner with humongous signs that are bigger than his body, strapped over his body, standing at the intersection. We've seen people have these long vinyl banners printed up, and they're standing on the sides of highways because they know we can't afford to buy commercial airtime that ASA is buying.
Yeah.
So, it's a great feeling, and I love watching the people get engaged. And this is their race. It's not mine, and that's what I told the Republicans at Boone County, folks. This is much bigger than a race between Jan and Asa. This is a race between the people of Arkansas and big government. It is the people's race to lose. I am simply here as their voice tonight, just like I will simply be in that governor's office and at that state capitol as their voice if they elect me.
Yeah, we're don't cut the sound. Cut the sound. Just show this guy. This is the guy with the Jan Morgan for governor sign on. Look at that. That's if you're watching over at facebook.com/Conduit News, that's what Jan is referring to here. So yeah, people are being engaged here now. Jan, there was when Donald Trump ran in 2016 in Arkansas in the primary, you had Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and obviously President Trump was on the ballot, and there were new voters who have never voted in a Republican primary, let alone, in any race, that came out of the woodwork and they voted for Donald Trump, and Donald Trump won the primary here in the state of Arkansas. And I just think that the establishment knows that if that same voter turns out again during this primary, that they are in trouble. Yeah.
They are in trouble. And I think that you are going to see that happen, and here's why. If you recall, there were people, first of all, that never voted, that voted for Trump. There were Democrats that transferred over and voted for Trump. And I will tell you that we are also watching Democrats move over and vote, and transform. There's a group of people in Arkansas called Democrats for Jan. I met one last night. He came to the Glenwood meeting. He is a staunch Democrat. He's been a Hillary supporter all these years. But he walked into that meeting, and you listened to my message about the establishment end of the Democrat Party as well as the establishment end of the Republican Party has betrayed the people. That, who in here doesn't feel like they're paying enough taxes tonight? When he heard that and he listened to that and he listened to our message and he saw the authenticity behind the message, that I'm not a politician. Those are the kinds of people who really aren't Democrats at heart. They're just ready for some integrity in government, in their state government. By the time he left that meeting last night, he bought a Jan Morgan for Governor hat and T-shirt, and he's in. So, we may not agree on a number of the policies, but people are ready for some integrity, and that's where we are.
Yeah, for a non-politician.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, and one of the things that I think won him over last night, I explained that 10% of the state's most wealthy have controlled public policy through bought and paid for career politicians who then serve the interests of the economic elite rather than the people at large. So Democrats, you've been fooled too, because people no longer trust their government, a government that under Republican leadership has voted down legislation, Paul, that brings transparency, ethics, and accountability to government. There is no excuse for Republican legislators to not pass that legislation, and there is absolutely no excuse for Asa Hutchinson to have sat on his hand and not pushed for that kind of ethics, for that kind of transparency in our state government.
Well, it would have exposed, I think, a lot of the people he depends on to carry his water. That's my speculation, but I think that's why they don't want it. And, of course, now we're seeing all these trials play out. And I want to applaud you in your speech. You did bring that up, how embarrassing it is that we have the FBI running around Arkansas investigating Republicans and Democrats, but a lot of Republicans. And this is supposed to be, the party of reform, the party of the ethical high ground, and we're seeing that that's not necessarily the case.
No, it is not. And what I wanted to let people know, and what I'm telling people now is there is hope and help is on the way, that under my leadership, legislators will be free to work for the people rather than pressured to work against the people. I sounded the alarm to the Republicans in Boone County and told them that we're going to have to wake up, that we need to stand up, and we need to fight to a return to the foundation of this party and its fiscal, constitutional, and moral values that made it the party of, by, and for the people. That's what we've got to return back to, and if we do not, we will lose this state. It will become a blue state. It's already a purple state as we speak. You can say it's red all you want, but the kind of policies and the things that have happened under Republican leadership, and the fact that our Tax Reform Commission is talking about repealing the tax exemptions on groceries, prescriptions, used cars. We've already passed taxes on double tax on new tires, remounted tires, all these kinds of things. Those are things that happen under Democrat leadership, and that's why I say we're not a solid red state now, even though we get the vote. We are looking like a purple state. I want to take this state back to a solid red.
Yeah. I think history is going to show Asa Hutchinson as a transitional governor, transitioning to a governor that actually believes in conservatism. Now, you mentioned the grocery tax, Jan. The last time we had you on, we talked about the grocery tax. There's a lot of people that started talking about the grocery tax, and they couldn't believe that this was on the list of the recommendations, not to mention you mentioned in your speech about, churches and some of their exemptions as well, bake sales or something, I think. And yet the tax farce met the other day, and they decided to say, okay, which of the 40 are we going to study further? And the grocery tax was one of them. After all of the media attention, and they said, no, we're going to go ahead and study this further, which means this is part of their plan, and it has been all along. Let's just tax shift, and let's make the middle class and the wealthy pay the full 6.5% on groceries.
Yes, and that's in spite of the fact that the governor's spokesperson, J.R., sat there on another radio program in Little Rock when he was pressed about the grocery tax. He said, oh, no, we just put everything out there to look at it. Just because it's on that list doesn't mean that we're really seriously considering this. And then what happened? They went beyond seriously considering it to let's put a number to it. Let's put a number to the tax that we're going to apply to groceries, that we're going to repeal and apply. And what kind of numbers are we talking about? So, the governor's carefully crafted language is going to come back to hurt him in this election because people are paying attention. Finally, people in this state are paying attention. And people told me, I was told at the outset, Jan, your biggest obstacle in this race is going to be the apathy and the education level of people in the state. And, Paul, I have to tell you, thanks to you and to Conduit News, Conduit for Action, Conduit for Commerce, the people of this state are getting educated, and they've got good, credible links to solid, factual information to back up their positions, and they're able to. I'm watching them. It's so exciting to watch them instead of just a few of us out there, spouting facts and educating. It's a whole slew of citizens in this state now who are excited about the fact that they know what's going on in their government, thanks to you guys in your research, and it's going to be a new Arkansas. I really believe that. May 23rd, a new Arkansas.
Well, ASA has certainly an enthusiasm gap with his supporters. I mean, they're having to find ways to, create new ways to support him. Like, oh, well, I'll vote for him because of this instead of his actual record. Whereas I feel like your campaign has all this momentum and has a lot of enthusiastic people who are, again, making, costumes out of your signs and going out on a street corner. It's really good. Now, the last question, Jan Morgan, Republican gubernatorial candidate, in your speech at Boone County, it was a good one, but you also looked Asa right in the eye and said, hey, I look forward to debating you. How about a debate? And the crowd broke out in applause. So it seems like the people in Boone County want a debate between you two.
Sure they do. And not only did I do that then in my speech, which I wish you could have seen the look on his face. It was like a deer in the headlights look. But I also actually approached him in the lobby afterwards It's the first time he and I have literally come within inches of each other, face to face. I approached him, reached my hand out to shake his hand and said, Governor, hey, how about that debate? So what are we going to do about this? And he literally started backing away from me, almost bumped into his state police detail. So it was the most uncomfortable thing for him in the world. I was very comfortable. You know, when you know you're doing right by the people, it's very easy to just walk up to your opponent and say, look, the people of this state deserve this chance to see us side by side on the same stage, hashing out the issues. Come on, let's do right by the people.
Yeah.
But he's not going to do that.
I don't think he will either, because I really don't think. I think his campaign strategy is to just have his surrogates call you a liar, and if that
right.
And he can't explain his. So if he were to call you a liar on a debate stage, that would get old real quick, and that would actually be a net negative for him. And then if he were actually to explain his record of tax shifting and increased spending, well, then we finally have him on record as not being a conservative. So it's a lose-lose, and it's a shame, because I would love to see a debate as well. I think it'd be great, but I don't think, and we're not going to hold our breath.
No, and also I want to let people know who are watching this, I will not be in Saline County this week. They've been promoting me as Asa and Jan are going to be in the same location again, and somebody even said, yeah, it's going to be a debate. No, it's not. The Saline County event is going to be a situation where Asa gets to speak, or Jan gets to speak, then Asa gets to speak, and Jan doesn't get to rebut. And because he is refusing to debate, we are announcing we're going into the newspaper today with this information, so you're getting it first, and Paul Harrell Show is getting it first. We are not going to be speaking at the Saline County event. We are having a counter event at the same time in Benton at the Enclave. And the reason is this: if the governor if he's refusing to debate me, if he refuses to be in a room with me where there is no chance for rebuttal, and then I'm not going to appear with him in the same room again. We're just not going to do that. If we can't have equal time and a chance to go back and forth, then we're not going to play that game.
I think that's smart, and I think it's a good idea. I mean, have the counter event.
Well, it makes a circus. It makes a circus act out of, bring Jan and Asa together so everybody can watch them, and and whoever's in control of the event gets to control the narrative and gets to decide who gets to speak when, and obviously getting to speak last is the advantage, because then you can counter anything your opponent says, and then they don't have a chance to refute.
Right.
So that's my position.
So you guys are going to have a counter. So you're guys are going to have a counter event the same night as the Saline County event.
Yes.
Those listening on 101.1 The Answer out of Little
same
Rock.
Time.
Same time.
It will be an enclave. We'll be posting. I'll be posting information on that today on my wall, so people will be able to see where to come and hear us speak.
All right, well, we'll bring people up to speed as well. Jan Morgan, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for spending the morning with us. All right, folks, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Oh my goodness. I know you guys have seen this if you are talk radio junkies like myself or you just follow the news or a news hound, but good grief. Did anybody see Benjamin Netanyahu's speech yesterday exposing the flaws in the Iran deal and essentially saying that Iran lied? I mean, we all knew this, but the fact that Israel somehow got access to 100,000 documents, and it was extremely theatrical. Not only did Benjamin Netanyahu have the PowerPoint, but he then literally had curtains that he pulling off of the CDs and the folders where you could see the documents themselves, and then he went slide by slide, and it was you just kind of felt like you were watching something historic. I mean, it's amazing, ladies and gentlemen. Saudi Arabia, Donald Trump gets no credit for this, even among some Republicans. But the truth is, Saudi Arabia recognized Israel's right to exist. North Korea and South Korea claim to have peace, and North Korea very well may denuclearize and have a unified Korean peninsula. And that's because of the Trump administration, Donald Trump. And we now may actually get to the bottom of another big threat, which is Iran. And it seems like they're being dealt with. Very much like, the harsh rhetoric that Donald Trump had for North Korea for such a long time. And then what happened? Well, something happened. There was something that was done to, bring North Korea to the table. And of course, none of these foreign policy changes. Now, you may not call them foreign policy victories yet. Now, I kind of would. I feel like Saudi Arabia recognizing Israel's right to exist is a pretty big deal. But you may not call them victories. But they are certainly seismic shifts going on right now in geopolitics. Huge. And it's because 100% I'm convinced of this, that Donald Trump is president, and he is that much of an anti-status quo guy. You know what I'm saying? His policies are working. His policies seem to be pretty great right now. But say what you want, right? If you just had some regular Republican, I don't think you'd be seeing these seismic shifts. If you had some regular Democrat, I don't think you would be seeing these shifts. It's because he is so different than anything we've had in our lifetime. Anyway, that's my take on the national Arkansas news, a little geopolitics as well. We will see you tomorrow, Arkansas. Go to conduitnews.com if you want this copy of this broadcast. Arkansas, be safe.